Hi everyone, I'm very happy to be here today for the third Redalyc conference. My presentation today is entitled Publication Model in Africa, Prioritize Knowledge Production. Who am I? I am Thomas Hervé Nkoudou, a Cameroonian researcher, still a PhD researcher at Université Laval. My interest in scholarly communication and publication system is due to my involvement in Project SOA as assistant since 2015. Our focus was to do research on invisibility of French-speaking African researcher. Today, it's a great honor for me to talk about the landscape of publication in Africa, but it's also enough for me because only my small person cannot speak for all Africa. You know, Africa is a very big thing with more than 50 countries. That is why I really want to go from an organization. I really want to start with an organization which has like 40 years experience in terms of research in Africa. The organization is called Conferencia, and that is why the Conferencia is the Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa. Conferencia has more than 40 years of existence. It's better for me to learn from, it's better for us in order for you to better understand the landscape of scholarly communication. It's better to move or to go from the vision of Conferencia. So I will start by reading this quote from Nyamjo. It is common in discussion of open access to limit the issue to publication and dissemination. This conflates accessibility with recognition and presentation, and suppose that competing and conflicting knowledge system and idea will be equally affordable if room were created for multiple channels of accessibility. Such enthusiasm and euphoria, while understandable, do not adequately account for the prevalent power relation that structure knowledge production into interconnection hierarchy at local and global levels. For me, this code is very important. I really want to move from that because we have a lot of discussion about access, about diffusion of knowledge, about tools, and about so many things. But we used to forget the importance of production of knowledge. To this way, Conferencia give us two big lessons. The first one is the need to privilege and prioritize recognition and representation of the perspective, epistemology and contextual methodology, diversity that inform knowledge production. The second one is the need to widen our understanding and discussion of open access. But for this conference, for the purpose, for our purpose during this conference, the idea for me is to just focus on the first lesson 1, which is like call for us to bring diversity that inform knowledge production in a publication system. But to do that, I will start by the peers foundation, because in scientific publication, generally, broadly speaking, our focus is just on how people contribute, the infrastructure they have, and whatever or what their research moving or are diffused around the world. But we used to forget the most important thing, because even if the foundation are the base, all the rest will go wrong, because the situation in Africa, when you have you have many right on many paper describing the situation of the invisibility of Africa, African research or African publication on the web. And these research are based in some quantification about on publication paper present on the web, quantification in terms of number of grant, quantification in terms of many things. But all this quantification, all this classification, all this invisibility are based on the peers foundation, the mindset, as Codessia learned to us. African scholar face a critical choice between relevance for recognition or recognition for relevance. So there's like a dilemma. Sometimes some researchers really want to do research just for recognition, and others want to do research for relevance. But those who want to do research for relevance are really not recognized. The environment, the local environment don't allow them to be exposed, and that is why many of them go to write paper or to publish just for recognition. And this way to publish, this way to work, has a very bad impact in our mindset, since our book are really not, or our publication are really not related to our context. Our paper don't show the reality of our continent, and this is also what we call like epistemic alienation, and because in the paper you cannot really see the reality of the paper of Africa. The second bias foundation is the market, because even in the local context in Africa, if a publisher or university press want to promote or want to publish your work, your relevant work, they will be pushed away due to the fact that they are not aligned with standardized, routinized, and predictable menu, what is expected to respect. This is a base foundation. Also the global perception. Many researchers working in the Western context try to many of their work show a wrong face of Africa, like with many stereotypes of poverty. So, according to all these three based foundation, we cannot really uh, make our research great. We cannot really be present inside the world. And the causes of this situation are many. We can have local causes to this situation, because that is why we call in projet soit cognitive injustice or epistemic alienation. Locally, research don't accept or don't recognize local research as relevant, because they think that all what is important or all what is good is just coming from the Western context. So at this time, many people used to think or used to write paper using the Western eyes, and they used to think our local context with the Western eyes. That is not good. This way to think bring us show or share a very bad or wrong reality about our continent. Another problem is also the language of publication, as I'm sure is the same in Latin America, because the big or the most used language in scholarly communication is English. Like now, I'm using English to expose or to give my talk, even if my first language is French, and you are using English to talk with me, even if your first language is Spanish. Why local? Because all this language, even Arabic, even French, even English, even Portuguese or Spanish in Africa are colonial language. We have our own local language, but we are not using this language. We are obliged to use this colonial language in order for us to communicate or to share our knowledge. If you take inside Africa, there is no communication due to this language barrier between, there is not much communication due to this language barrier between French-speaking African country and English-speaking African country. But at this time, the question is, since all these languages are colonial, should we fight one colonial language to another colonial language? This is a very big dilemma, because as a French speaking, I cannot fight French or fight English for French, or vice versa, because all these languages are colonial. But it's true that this language barrier has a very bad impact in the landscape of scholarly communication inside Africa. And the third point, the third cause is locally, is policies. Policies used by decision maker or in our institution are not aware of what or of the evolution of scholarly communication around the world, and this make that research don't feel well to work. They are working in very bad conditions since they don't have the political support. Thing like open access publication, since the institution don't know what it is really, even if the researcher want to publish in open access, he will not be able due to this lack of policy support. So at the global level, there is also a big cause due to market with what is global, the world system of academic knowledge, and with the center of power and semi-periphery and periphery. And since African research are in the periphery, so it means that African research are invisible. They are not taken account in the world system because we are just in the periphery. In order to remind you, African just produce like 1% of the worldwide production of knowledge. And this is not true because this quantification is based on some systems, some standard, which doesn't take in account the language factors, the language factor, or all the physical production present in our universities. So this is a very big issue in the continent, in the scholarly communication. Perspective can be seen for the future of scholarly communication in Africa. What can we do? As I said at the beginning, the main important thing is not to focus on infrastructure, on equipment, or on access. In Africa, we should focus first in knowledge production. That is very important because, and that is why the first step for me is education by empowering employment of researcher, because there is a very big gap in terms of publication, in terms of best practice of open access, because researchers are not aware of what is open access. They don't have courses on how to publish, what is best practice, and really they cannot do anything. This is a specific case. This is a specific case for French-speaking African country. As I said at the beginning, I cannot speak for all the continent. So, in French-speaking African country, we don't have courses in our curricula where we are able to learn how to publish in open access, how to what is open access, best practice of open access, how to adopt best practice of open access. So for me, we can focus on this on this training in order to give research these tools to be able to produce endogenous knowledge. And this can take a very long time also, and that is why also communication is very important. Communication inside the continent, communication at the national level, because sometimes in the same country, if you are taking the case of Cameroon, in the same country, many researchers are working in the same field, but they don't know what the other researcher is doing because there is no communication inside one country, and there is also no communication inside in terms of language, because what French speaking people researchers are doing, English researchers really don't read what they are doing. And at the continental level, we should also focus on policies, make or build policies sensitive to open access, build policies which can make researchers feel comfortable to produce knowledge, build policies according to our reality, build policies sensitive to local knowledge in order to make this to make knowledge very relevant in context. In the global level, so the challenge is also very big there. I really want to quote here work done by OCSDNet, my colleague Denise Albonos, about bring diversity in scholarly communication, because as she said, diversity leads to stronger knowledge sharing. Diversity leads to stronger knowledge sharing means what? For me, diversity is first to accept the other one. Accept that you are not alone. Accept that you can get contribution from everywhere around the country, around the continent, around the world. Diversity is to be aware that all knowledge are equal. Diversity for me is very important in order to change the landscape of scholarly communication in Africa, in global south, and around the world. And the fact to recognize local knowledge or indigenous knowledge make research be confident. Be confident. They said they make researchers trust in themselves. And collaboration also can be very important to establish a stronger partnership. In Latin America, and in Africa, we should learn from Latin America. I saw how Redalyc and Glasgow, for example, join effort to make research visible. But we can also do this kind of collaboration inside our continent and across the continent. Why not should we do this kind of collaboration between Latin America and Africa? It can be very helpful in order for us to share our knowledge and to discuss easily. In terms of inclusion and diversity, we need tools. I will just take the case of language. The case of language. Language, as I said, I cannot fight a colonial language for another colonial language. So for me, we should try to build tools which can make us or which can allow us communicate in our diversity. For example, Spanish, French, Arabic, a tool which can allow us to discuss or to share what we have, tools who can facilitate translation in order to avoid some people feel dominated or feel colonized by one language, or in order to avoid to have like a global language for science. And the last point is open knowledge sharing benefit the general public. In fact, what is better for us to share knowledge, because it can strengthen the production of knowledge. The production of knowledge, because, for example, if the knowledge is diverse, when I learn from some place, I can apply it somewhere in my country and make research advance. So that is what I have to say today. The most important thing of my presentation was just to say that in Africa, my claims is that in Africa, in the landscape of scholarly communication, we should focus firstly on knowledge position, the process of knowledge position, the condition in which knowledge are produced in such a way that researcher will be able to will be empowered to think which kind of tools, which kind of collaboration, which kind of which kind of paper they need to write in order to make our research read and to contribute efficiently with relevance and sharing the reality or context in the global conversation. So that is my point for me. After the very big experience with Roger Soa, the infrastructure is not can come after, but the first thing is to prioritize knowledge production by empowering young researchers, by giving them training, by through policy support, through communication, language communication, and so on. So thank you very much for your time.